I started writing down my own answers to questions I could not find answers in medical textbooks.
That's amazing. Talk to me about whenever we think of lifestyle diseases, what does that mean?
That's exactly the information booklet I released last. Pandemics, type 2 diabetes, cancer, cardiovascular disease.
So, cancer even is a lifestyle disease?
Yes.
How so? Doc, I wanted to say thanks again for taking some time to chat with me today. And I wanted to give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself, tell people a little bit about what it is that you do and what your passions are.
Mr. Simon, I thank you for having me and I thank our listeners and viewers. I graduated from a medical school in India. I went to Scotland for a year of training. I came to the United States, did residency and fellowship. I practiced in the state of Texas for over 30 years. I retired about 15 years ago. Then I started writing down my own answers to questions I could not find answers in medical textbooks. I've written 5 books. My sixth book is going to be released in 2 months. And I'm here now spreading the news. The 2 books are on, one for weight reduction, one for diabetes reversal, two on cancer, and one on management of information. We get so much information in the social media. How do we navigate that? And the last book is a cookbook and diet guide, exercise guidance for people with type 2 diabetes to reverse diabetes using just diet.
That's amazing. Talk to me about whenever we think of lifestyle diseases, what does that mean and why are we misinformed about it?
Lifestyle diseases are those related to, that's exactly the information booklet I released last. Pandemics, type 2 diabetes, cancer, cardiovascular disease are the lifestyle diseases now. In future, it is going to be Alzheimer's and dementia and anxiety and depression.
So, cancer even is a lifestyle disease?
Yes.
How so?
See, do you know when we have the maximum number of precancerous cells in our body?
No.
Before you are born. Think about it. Cancer is in adult. The average age of an adult with cancer is 60. The average age of a child with cancer is 6. As the people say, adult requires 10 years of accumulation of mutations to produce a cancer stem cell. Every cancer starts with a stem cell. The stem cell is the mother cell that produces all cells. In fact, each one of us is the product of one stem cell, the zygote that formed after the fertilization of the ovum by the sperm. One single cell. Do you know where that takes place? That fertilization does not take place in the womb. It takes place in the fallopian tube as the ovum is rolling down. After fertilization, it's a 6-day journey to reach the womb. Do you know how many cells are in there by that time? 200. Think about it. How did the cell know to divide? Who taught the cell? The cell is not connected to the mother. This is what the ancestor cell, the very first cell on earth, did. It has been passed on through genes to present day. It is duplicated in the womb. Whatever happened for millions of years is duplicated within a matter of 9 months. But the difference is it's a controlled multiplication. When it reaches the womb, there are 200 cells. Those cells become stem cells assigned to different organs and systems in the body. They can then reproduce only what is required by that organ or a system. However, if one of them reverts back to the ancestral way of doing it, then he cannot control it. So uncontrolled multiplication of the cell is called what?
Cancer.
Cancer. That is cancer. That's
So
all it is.
if, and you're going to have to excuse my ignorance here, but so if these precancerous cells are predetermined, why is it then that we can change the course of that action in our lifetime? It's almost like in my mind when you say that, well, it's already predetermined that I'm going to have it, but we're saying there's things I can do to change it.
Wonderful question. The people who produce new cells in the womb are all novices. They have never made a cell before. Just like if you ask for people to construct your home, they have never experienced plumbing or wiring or anything. They are going to make multiple mistakes, right?
Right.
The same thing happens in the womb. You're going to gene. There are 25,000 genes in each cell. Each of them have to be duplicated within a matter of hours or days. So mistakes are common, but then nature knows this is going to happen. Nature has equipped us with a very strong immune system, and it has got a branch of white cells called natural killer cells. Their job is to hunt down any mutated cell and destroy them. So on the one hand, you have got cancer cells with mutated genes. On the other hand, you have got killer cells and they are fighting. If the cancer cells are winning, that means either the immune system is weak or they are multiplying faster than the capability of the immune system.
Okay.
Before the baby is born, 99% of the precancer cells are destroyed. Okay? So theoretically, we should not have cancer unless immune system is weak. But most people who have cancer don't have a weak immune system. Otherwise, they will have more infections and other things. So the only conclusion you can make is it is because the cancer cells are multiplying faster than the capability of the immune system to destroy them.
So what causes that too fast of replication?
There you go. That is where your lifestyle comes in.
Okay.
Now, in order for the cancer cell to multiply, they use the same raw materials as the regular cell. They look the same as the regular cell. That is why the immune system cannot even recognize them. A bad guy moves into your neighborhood. He looks just like us. Unless he does something bad, you don't know how bad he is. In fact, let me give you an example. If we have a woman with breast cancer and there is a secondary or metastasis, don't you think the most convenient, most welcoming place will be the other breast?
That would make sense.
But it doesn't happen. The secondary almost always happens in the lungs or someplace else. Why is that?
Is it big? I mean, I'm going to guess that it's because it's through the lymphatic system, right? That's how that usually spreads, or no?
It is going through the lymphatic system drains into the blood system.
Okay.
And it is the heart that pumps the blood to all over the body. So these cancer cells go all over the body, but they cannot find a hospitable space in the other breast. They won't tolerate it. They have immune system ready to kill them. Then how do they are welcomed in the lungs.
Right.
You know why?
Why?
Because we breathe in so many injurious, noxious things. There's always inflammation going on in the lungs. And when you have inflammation, you need repair. You need workers to do the repair. And the cancer cells will come there and pause, oh, I can do the work. Give me a place to stay. They are welcome. They are fed. Just like I said about your neighbor, you won't know the true nature of who is residing until he starts multiplying out of control.
So is it that it's the inflammation that is what invites that cancer cell then?
The inflammation makes the environment more comfortable for the cancer cells to be welcomed. However, they still need the same type of raw material. So
Right.
in a construction site, there are raw materials coming in. So the cancer cells get all the materials they need to produce new cells. They need one more thing, that is energy. Just like every construction needs either electricity or some form of energy, the cancer cells need energy. And our muscle cells, even if we have not eaten for a couple of days, we can still run, play, active. Why? Our muscle cells are like a hybrid engine. It can run on gasoline or electricity. Most cancer cells, they cannot run on fatty acid, they have to run on glucose. Our muscle cell can run on fatty acid or glucose, whereas cancer cells prefer glucose. So the more glucose you provide, the faster they grow. Now, let me connect it with the lifestyle. 60 years ago, we had the green revolution. Then we had the industrial revolution. Then we have the food industry, marketing, packaging. What is the most common food ingredient now consumed all around the world?
Like corn syrup?
No, grains and grain flour products.
Okay.
Wheat, corn, and rice. The percentage of food energy from grain-based foods that humans consumed before about 100 years ago was less than 30% of daily total food energy intake. Now, in the developed countries, it is 50%. In developing countries, it is 70%. When is the last time you had a meal or a snack without a grain flour product?
Yeah, I mean, other than eating like a banana or something, you know.
Right, exactly. All the snack foods, all the
Yeah.
convenient foods. Why? Because the government is subsidizing grain farming. And you have mechanized farming, better irrigation, good seeds, resistant seeds, market, and every chef can make magnificent dishes using grain flour.
So is it when we think about ways to prevent then these lifestyle diseases, is it you reduce sugar or you reduce the grain, a little bit of both? What is the steps then to think, well, how do I become healthier then?
Just a second. Most people, the moment they are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, you know, the first thing they do, they stop eating table sugar.
Okay. That would
Why?
make, because they think that would decrease their blood sugar.
How do you know? The only association is the word.
Right.
Table sugar is sucrose, it's a disaccharide. Blood sugar is glucose, it's a completely different molecule.
Hmm.
The only connection is the word association. On the other hand, each grain, the ingredient, complex carbohydrate in each grain is made of thousands of glucose molecules. When they are digested, all of them are absorbed into the blood as glucose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, whereas in sugar, only half is glucose, half is fructose. Glucose is absorbed faster, the fructose lags behind. Whereas in grains, if you take 1 tablespoon of rice, 1 tablespoon of sugar, which one will elevate your blood sugar faster?
And I've read that in a book before, like that grain, that rice would actually cause a greater insulin spike than just a tablespoon of sugar. And that's
Exactly.
true. That's
yeah. But they also, can you think of any food in nature that nature makes for adult humans that you can get nutrients from without chewing?
not really.
Hmm?
No.
Unless you consider honey.
Okay.
How much can you chew rice? How much can you chew bread, pasta, noodles? So what happens? Well, the moment you stop chewing, you swallow.
Mm-hmm.
So the quantity consumed increases. That is why in my first book, I put the middle title as Chew. Eat, chew, and live free of these lifestyle diseases.
So are they all so? And I guess as we're talking about the diseases, are all these, when we think about cancer, when we think about type 2 diabetes, when we think about heart disease, is it all caused by these same factors?
Yes, that is
So,
what. Let me give you an example.
okay.
The Native Americans were brought to the reservations in the year 1900. Okay, they had complete physical examination, and they had more octogenarians and septuagenarians, people in the 80s and 90s, compared to the same 100,000 people of white Americans. Yet, they had practically no type 2 diabetes, no cancer, not much heart disease. In fact, the Royal College sent an expert team of physicians to find out how come they don't have cancer. And they couldn't find a reason. They said they are naturally immune to cancer. How can that be? Now their cancer incidence is double that of white Americans in the same area.
Hmm.
The same with Black people, the same with Hispanics. In their native lands, in their natural environment, they practically had none of these lifestyle diseases. So, what changed?
Just the diet, right?
Exactly. In the natural habitat, the Native Americans moved from one food source to another. They ate meat, eggs, vegetables, fruits, nuts, birds, fish, tubers, everything, except one thing. They did not stay in one place to cultivate grains. They ate some wild corn, yes, but they never cultivated. So on the way to the reservation, what were they fed? Fry bread made of corn flour and lard. And there are plenty of grain-based foods available, almost free of charge in all the reservations. Now there 50% of the Pima Indian adults in Arizona above age 35 are diabetic or pre-diabetic. 50%. And we are all going to the same place. It's already 35 to 40% in adults in the United States considered pre-diabetic or diabetic.
When you first started talking, you said that you started asking questions that weren't in medical textbooks. Is this aspect of diet and the commercialization of the grain farming, is that stuff not taught in medicine? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to ask this question. Is this truly not understood by a lot of medical professionals, or do we understand it? We just can't do anything about it because of the
Well,
forces at work.
the simple answer that is what is called confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Let us take one example. Shall I take diabetes as an example?
Okay.
Diabetes is diagnosed with one test, elevation of blood sugar. That's it. There is no confirmatory test. There is one test. How does that happen? In order to understand that, we have to know how does the body use glucose. Glucose is the blood sugar that is elevated. Every cell in the body can use glucose to produce energy. That's a given. However, now let me ask you, if you live in an apartment or a house, how do you know there is somebody outside your apartment or house? When they ring the doorbell, you know.
Right.
When the sugar is outside a cell, the sugar has no doorbell to ring. It cannot ring the doorbell. That is the job of insulin. Insulin is the messenger to let the cell know there is glucose outside. Then the cell has to send in a wagon, open the door, load up glucose, and bring them in. Imagine if you don't have insulin, there's plenty of glucose. If you don't have insulin, what happens? The cells starve. That is the situation in type 1 diabetes.
Okay.
Their pancreas does not produce insulin. They have plenty of sugar. That's why they call diabetic. But the cells starve inside, and they used to die by age 10 until two researchers in Canada identified and purified insulin. Now, here comes the kicker. The person who treated the maximum number of children with type 1 diabetes was a doctor called Elliot Jocelyn of Boston. You may have heard of a Jocelyn clinic in Boston, very world-renowned clinic. And he was so amazed by the results because these children could now live a normal life. He never expected that. When his adult relative came with high blood sugar, he injected her with insulin. And sure enough, her blood sugar went down. And he thought it's the same disease, but starting at an older age group. He called it adult onset diabetes. What he did not know was when an adult comes with high blood sugar, there is normal or above normal levels of insulin already in the blood. When a test became available, that was revealed, that was detected. Now the endocrinologist had a problem. How can you have both insulin and glucose elevated at the same time? So first they said it is a non-insulin dependent diabetes. There's some other cause other than problem with insulin. But then they have to have a problem. They couldn't identify a problem. At that time, there were first reports of penicillin-resistant bacteria. So a doctor in Vienna called William Falta in 1940 hypothesized maybe something similar is happening here. The cells are not responding to insulin. So boy, endocrinologists were happy because this is what they were waiting for. Just an explanation. They believed in it. Now they have an explanation. So it is what I call the confirmation bias. They have already confirmed insulin is the problem in adult with type 2 diabetes. All they wanted was some kind of explanation. They still don't have a mechanism. They still don't know why the cell. And the interesting part is there are 200 types of cells in the body. As I mentioned, there are 200 cells coming to the womb in the zygote, each one. But you know how many become resistant to insulin? According to endocrinologists, only 3. 197 have no problem. The 3, why? Because the endocrinologists need somebody to blame it. They already confirmed there is a problem. And they blame these cells. Three organs: liver, muscle, and fat. And each one of these organs have millions of cells. How can somebody coordinate all this? And there's no rational, there's no logic in any hypothesis, in any science. It has to go through what is called a validation process. First, the logic, the hypothesis has to be logical. So if you say 3 out of 200 types of cell become resistant to one of the 50 hormones in the body. Now, how much credibility will you give to that? If I come up with that hypothesis right now, you will laugh me out of the room. I have no reason. Secondly, all these type of cells, is it the same mechanism they use to resist? Maybe the doorbell is not ringing, or maybe the chime is not working, or the line is not connected, or there's no electricity. Is that the same problem in each of these sites? Third, you need to have a measurement so somebody independently can verify it. Have you ever heard of a test to measure the degree of insulin resistance?
Me, no.
No. The only thing is the blood sugar. You can do up and down, up and down. That's it. And they say, oh, if you have high blood sugar, does that mean you have higher insulin resistance? They want you to assume that. There's no test. So if you are giving somebody an injection of insulin, the blood sugar goes down. Does it actually go to the cell that was resistant? Without a test to measure, how do you know?
Well, where else would it go? Like if I just
That's an interesting question. I was waiting for that.
okay.
The insulin instructs the liver, which is supposedly resistant to insulin, to convert the glucose into fat. Almost everybody who start insulin start gaining weight. Where does that weight come from? The glucose that was floating in the blood, now it is fat. And you know what? It is the fat that blocks your arteries, cause all the complications. Blockage kidneys, blocked eyes, blocked blood vessels into the heart, into the brain. But endocrinologists are happy, the drug manufacturers are happy because your blood sugar is down. You are blind, but look at it. Your blood sugar is normal. What more do you want?
So that just it makes so literally it's because there's too much sugar, and then we just give ourselves more insulin. It just uses that and then it kind of makes fat cells out of it,
Yes,
or that stores that sugar
exactly.
into the fat because it has
Yeah,
nowhere else to go because healthy cells can't
right,
use it. It's
exactly.
excess.
Yeah. If you ask the endocrinologist, they would say, oh, the sugar is metabolized. What does that mean?
Right.
Does that produce sugar? You can use only for two things, either produce more energy or store it as fat. If you give somebody an injection of insulin, do they go and exercise more?
No.
No.
Well, I guess so. And help me understand this part. If I'm eating a grain and it creates that insulin spike, is it the same process then? It's still doing the same thing. It's taking that sugar and converting it directly to fat because it's in excess?
Yes, the
Okay.
human liver can keep only 120 grams of glucose. And the muscles and the cells in the body keep about the same 120 grams. Anything in excess, there's no place to store it. So it has to be converted into fat.
Got it.
If the fat stores are full, then the fat stays in the blood. So one of the first blood level that go up in a diabetic is what is called triglyceride. That's the fat. When the triglyceride goes up, the liver converts glucose into fatty acid, and the muscles start using fatty acid to produce energy, just like a hybrid car.
Okay.
That leaves glucose out in the blood because muscles don't need it. Most of our energy in the body produced by muscles come from fatty acid, not from glucose. Muscle, you can starve all day, 2 days, 3 days, your muscles still function. Why?
Right.
It is using fatty acid to produce energy, not glucose. So there is plenty of fatty acid available. By the way, the fatty acid can get into the cell without ringing the doorbell or anything. It can freely, because the muscle's cell wall is made of fat. So they can wiggle in much easier than glucose. Glucose has to wait for an answer. So if there is free food available for the muscles to produce energy, free fuel, why do they want to spend energy on transporting glucose?
So is the answer to it reducing the overall glucose intake, or is it spreading out that, like, I guess I'm trying to ask the question, is it better to just reduce the caloric intake overall, or is it better to eat like the small meals more consistently so that your body can process it? What's that change look like to be healthy?
The ultimate objective is to consume less than 30% of our daily food energy from complex carbohydrate.
Got it.
And what the composition of complex carbohydrate, it doesn't matter. My point is, grains were never meant for humans. Otherwise, we would have had beaks to pick them up, and we would have the ability to digest the chaff. We cannot.
Yeah.
So only the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution and the irrigation and the mechanization and government subsidies. Every country in the world subsidizes either farming or fertilizing or food stamps or ration cards, and promote grain-based food intake.
Because it's cheaper to produce? Is that why?
Yes,
Okay.
because the government is giving you money.
Yeah.
The irony is, you spend in the United States, you spend $25 billion to subsidize grain farming, and then you spend 7 times that to treat the complications of diabetes, overweight, and heart disease. 7 times. What kind of return is that?
Well, it's good for some people, for some pharmaceutical companies, right?
It is good for the the politicians and the grain farmers
Okay.
and the states.
Right.
They are the ones holding on to, unless that changes. Because why can't the government subsidize equally vegetables and fruits and nuts? Why grain?
That is a good question. Is there an answer to that question, or is it just because
You
the
have to
profit
start
margins?
asking questions.
Right.
If common people, especially those who are right now suffering from diabetes, and if you're starting complications of diabetes, you have to start asking your doctor, if I am resistant to insulin, why am I given insulin?
Mm.
If you are resistant to an antibiotic, if the doctor says, oh, you are resistant to penicillin, but this is a prescription for it, will you take it?
No.
Here, everybody's taking it. Why? Because the doctors don't have to answer it. Nobody's asking. And they say, oh, your blood sugar is down. Sure. Then why am I having problems? Why am I going blind? Why am my kidneys are damaged? Why do I have to go to a dialysis if the sugar control is equal to disease control? Sugar control is just a symptom control, not the disease control. That is the second thing that we need to make people understand. Endocrinologists have been getting away with it for the last 80 years.
Mm.
So we have to start, the family members, the patients will have to start asking questions. All they have to do is to prove the presence of insulin resistance as they believe, as they propagate. Let us show, let us have an evidence. That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking them to do anything. Just they can prove me wrong by proving themselves right. I
Seems simple
talked
enough.
to the NIH, and they say, oh, this is established. In order to change it, I have to prove them wrong. Now, how are you going to prove a negative?
Well, would the proof be that insulin dependency test or the resistancy test that you talked about that doesn't exist? Like that would actually, you know what I
There's
mean?
no insulin resistancy test. There are interpretations. There is no
Right.
direct test.
But if
They
you could
can,
create that test, then I guess it would prove it, right?
why haven't not they created it for 80 years? That is exactly what,
Right.
for that you need to have a mechanism. How is the cell resisting insulin? That's exactly what I'm asking.
Gotcha.
But they still don't have a mechanism by which. Now, even more interesting is, take a young lady, second trimester, no family history of diabetes, no personal history of diabetes, she become diabetic, called gestational diabetes, okay?
Mhm.
3 days after delivery, her diabetes goes away, or 4 days. How can that happen? How can you have a temporary diabetes or temporary resistance to insulin? And it's the same 3 cells or 3 organs.
Is that just the diet as well, that the glucose intake? Like, I mean, what causes that temporary change?
Again, wonderful question. What is the mechanism? In my way of explaining it, as I told you, when you eat too much grains, it's more than the body can use or store. So the liver converts that excess glucose into fatty acid to be converted into fat. And if there is no storage area, the fatty acid is elevated in the blood. Muscles switch to fatty acid, leaving glucose in the blood, and you are a diabetic.
Right.
When you are pregnant, Everybody's telling you, oh, eat this. This is good for the baby's brain. This is for his height, for bones, for complexion, for intelligence. She eats and eats, fills up her fat storage capacity. By the way, we don't inherit a diabetic gene. What we are inheriting is our fat storage capacity.
Interesting.
So once you fill that up, the fatty acid stays in the blood, the glucose stays in the blood. Once the lady delivers the baby, the weight goes down, there's empty fat space, fat storage, her blood sugar is normal. It's just simple.
Well, it's simple and hard at the same time, because the hard part is people changing their habits and their diets.
The only way it can happen is for them to understand,
Yeah.
because they are in charge. Now they are giving the charge to the medications and the doctors and the gadget makers. It is so amazing. Very well educated people, they will look at a number and say, oh, I'm good. I had a colleague of mine who was a pediatrician who should know better. He will come and look over the food when we invite him for a meal, and he would say, John, I have to go and take an extra dose of insulin. I said, why? Oh, the food looks so good. I want normal blood sugar tomorrow. He had a massive heart attack, okay? Because he was gradually converting that glucose into fat. And, the gadget companies would say, all you have to do is look at it, find the reading. Yes. And my friend, who was a PhD in organic chemistry, he kept his A1C below 7 for 20 years. He had amputations of 3 toes and developed cancer. There are people, nurses, who develop kidney problems, mothers who develop Alzheimer's, in all of them, diabetic, taking insulin, keeping A1C below 7. When you think about them, my own relative, her husband was a medical college professor. He was diligent in keeping her blood sugar below 7. She had one leg amputated. During my training, I thought maybe doctor should change it because it didn't work. No, he continued the same, and 3 years later, she had the other leg amputated. Just imagine the husband, an elderly professor retiring, having to take care of his wife, physical needs, mental needs, emotional needs. How can you see that and continue the same? I don't understand the mental picture of these endocrinologists. How can they still say, oh, your blood sugar is great, check the blood sugar 6 times a day and you're good? How is that possible?
What do you think it is? I mean, you're from that world, I mean, and we're trained to just trust inherently what our doctors
That
and
is
providers
what I said. Once you believe in it, because they have nothing else they can latch on to. You are talking about their whole livelihood, right?
Yeah.
85% to 90% of the diabetics in this world are type 2. If that
Goes
is
okay.
yanked away from them, what do they have?
Yeah, that's a good point.
What do the drug companies have? Is there any other chronic medical condition where you're asked to check a test or a parameter 5-6 times a day? You don't check your blood pressure 5 times a day, cholesterol 5 times a day, breathing 5 times a day. Why blood sugar?
I want to get to the lifestyle changes, but I have a question, because after you explained that we don't have, a genetic, it's not passed down, our insulin dependency or anything like that. It's the fat storage, right? Is that what causes, you talked about like Native Americans and Black people and Hispanics that have this, they had a significant jump whenever they were introduced to this westernized diet. Is it because genetically they have lower fat stores, like evolutionarily speaking, they had lower fat stores, and that is what caused them to have a higher risk now of the type 2 diabetes?
You have hit the right spot. Yes. If you look at the Asians,
right,
60% of them with type 2 diabetes are not obese. As against the United States, 85% are obese or overweight.
Right.
Okay. Secondly, the medical books have no explanation why a lean person becomes diabetic. No explanation. You say, oh, suddenly they become insulin resistant. Why didn't that resistance start from day one? They were lean from the day one.
Mm-hmm.
No explanation. Whereas if you use my theory, for generations, the Asians, they were lean people. The Native Americans were lean and fit. Yes, they did more exercise, but they didn't have a whole lot to store. They didn't need a lot of storage capacity. That is what you inherited. Once you fill that up, it doesn't matter what your age is. Now, younger and younger people are getting diabetes, type 2 diabetes. Why? Because they are gorging on grain-based foods instead of the whole food intake mechanism has changed. Okay? That is one of the first questions I had that I had to write my own answers. Let me ask you this if you have time.
Of course.
What can you predict when you are going to feel the sensation of hunger next?
No.
No. How does your brain know this is the time to produce the sensation of hunger?
The assumption would be your stomach is empty, right?
When you wake up in the morning, your stomach is the most empty. Is that the time you're most famished?
For me, no.
No. For most people, no. So that argument is completely out.
Right.
Within 4 hours after your meal, your stomach is completely empty.
So that's when I should be hungry again. Under that logic, right?
Correct. I couldn't find any answers. The best answer they gave me was when your blood sugar goes down.
Okay.
It is true. If your blood sugar goes down, you will feel hungry. But then tell me, why should a diabetic ever feel hungry?
So there is there no answer to why we actually have the hunger feeling, the hunger sensation?
Read
Okay.
my book. My answer to that is here.
Right.
Because hunger, human body needs 100 different nutrients. Okay? We also need water. For water, there is a very distinct sensation, thirst. For all 100 nutrients, there is only one sensation, hunger.
Right.
So every cell in the body is reporting to the control center in the brain what nutrients they need. The need changes. Just to give you an example, if we go to a lunch, a buffet, 100 items, how many will you choose?
3 or 4.
3 or 4, based on what?
My preferences, I guess, in food, what I find that tastes good.
Based on what your previous experience is. Or you may try one new, but most of them.
Right.
And we sit down, you will enjoy it, right?
Right.
Suppose we go back to the same buffet for supper. Will you take exactly the same 4 that you enjoyed for lunch? All the same, because you enjoyed it so much.
Yeah.
Will you take them?
Me, yeah. I would just go back
All
to the
of
same
them,
thing.
same thing, even though there are other things?
Maybe change one of them.
One of them. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Because of my past decisions, the things that I know that I like.
Right. The reason what you think you're changing the preference, because what I'm suggesting is the nutrients that you got from lunch, the brain is aware of what you have, and in the meantime, what other nutrients have been reported deficient. And based on your previous experience, your subconscious mind knows where can you get those from.
Mm.
So your preference changes to a new food. Oh, that looks more appealing.
Because it's looking for new nutrients.
Yeah. So, in short, hunger sensation is created when the accumulated deficiencies reach a threshold level.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, now let me ask you another question. When you start eating, what makes you stop eating?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess to me, it's a feeling of being full.
Full. Okay, then you're talking about a volume.
Right.
Do you eat the same volume of food each time?
No.
Then how can you feel full?
So then that nutrient that I was, subconsciously wanting has probably been satiated, not necessarily an
That
amount.
takes 4 hours for digestion and absorption. You don't eat for
Ah.
4 hours.
So then what is it?
Good question. Let me ask you this. Let me give you another example. When you are thirsty, can you predetermine how much water will it take to quench your thirst?
No.
No. How long will it take? Suppose I bring you water right now. How long will it take to quench your thirst right now? How many sips?
Not very many.
Not very many. How long will it take? Less than a minute?
Yeah.
By the time you finish drinking, your thirst is quenched.
Mm-hmm.
The water is still in your stomach. It has not been even absorbed yet. How did the brain know you had enough water? On the other hand, you have been outside working out, sweating, you need more. The quantity of water that quenches your thirst is variable from each episode of drinking,
Yeah.
each act of drinking. How does the brain precisely measure to create the sensation of satisfaction?
I don't know.
If I blindfold you and
Yeah.
give you something to drink, how would you know whether it is water or beer or wine or soda or a Coke?
My taste receptors.
Your taste receptors. What I am suggesting is those taste receptors are not only monitoring what is going down, but also metering how much is going down. The brain already knows how much is your deficit. When the intake matches the deficit, it creates the sensation of satisfaction. In thirst, it is quenching. There's a similar mechanism for solid nutrients also. In order for that to happen, you have to chew your food. That releases the nutrients, and the brain will reward you with enjoyment. The first bite of that food tastes so good. After a few minutes, it doesn't taste as good. Why? Because the brain is telling you you had enough of that. Forget it. But you would rather keep it in your waste rather than put it in your waste basket. Right?
Right.
Once you put it on the plate, you cannot waste it.
No. So is the idea that those taste receptors are metering those needs, that's not widely accepted. That's something that you're theorizing, or is that understood?
That is strictly my theory.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense though, because I've never thought about
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
Well,
That's what I want to hear.
well, because how would you know so quickly that your needs have been met otherwise?
All you have to do is look at toddlers.
Yeah.
We have any nieces, nephews, children 2 to 6 years
Right.
of age.
Yep.
You will observe three things. One, they will eat only when they are hungry.
Yep.
Doesn't matter how much food is in the house. Second, if your grandmother or the mother gives them 10 different items, they will pick and choose each time. What they enjoyed yesterday, they could care less today.
Yeah.
And once they are done, they could care less how much is left on the plate. They would
Yep.
rather go out and play. So they decide when to eat, what to eat, how much to eat, and they're growing up normally.
It's only when we force things on them that it changes, right?
There you go. If we every one of us had the same faculty. And as you said, do you know when that changes? When the children start listening to their parents.
Yeah.
Just like you said, oh, we don't have time to stop on the way. You better eat. We have to go right now. Whether you're hungry or not doesn't matter. If you finish this, I can give you the dessert. And you've got school activity, sports activity, work activity. Eating becomes something you do as you are working. You don't have time to sit down and enjoy. There is no other enjoyment that you can have multiple times a day in a given day other than eating. Not even sex, you cannot do so many times a day.
Right.
Yet people don't take the time to enjoy it. They are in a hurry. In order to enjoy it, you have to chew, you have to feel, you have to have the flavor. How much flavor do you have? If I give you boiled rice, will you enjoy it by
Not,
itself?
no.
No. So, what you are trying to do is you take the bread or the rice, add to something that you enjoy, and reduce. Aren't you reducing the enjoyment of that?
Right.
Why would you want to do that?
That's interesting. On that thought, and one thing I wanted to ask you about was the idea of intermittent fasting, because
Okay.
for me it worked from a caloric restriction standpoint. But I want to know because the other thing that people talk about with it is that having that long period of, your fasting window is what helps keep that insulin down because you're not having an insulin spike. Is there any truth to that, or is it an advantageous way of eating because of those thoughts?
Well, there are different ways we can answer it. Every day we are fasting in between meals,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Everyone is fasting when you are sleeping. So if you want to fast longer, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
Secondly, does it matter what time you add gasoline into your car?
No.
It depends on the quantity of gasoline and how much you're going to be spending. That is what the requirement is. If you spend more nutrients, you need more. It doesn't matter what time you provide. So to me, it makes no difference whether you eat 12 times a day or 2 times a day, 3 times a day. It makes no difference to me. If you're happy with it, go for it. It is the quantity that you consume over a 24-hour period, the variety.
Well, that's the key, right? It's that variety to get those 100 nutrients. That's the thing I think
Exactly.
that a lot of us miss is that, well, I can eat,
Exactly.
one healthy meal, but if that's it, then, and it doesn't, reach all those different nutrients, that's the problem. Are we able to supplement? Is that an okay
That,
way
that,
to
that
think
is a
about it?
very commonly asked question. When you say supplement, there are, before I go to the supplement, let me answer the insulin spike that you
Okay.
mentioned. The insulin spike is relative to the glucose elevation. Okay? It is elevation of blood glucose is the most potent stimulus for insulin release from the pancreas. So, suppose you consume a breakfast that contains a lot of complex carbohydrate from grains, your blood sugar is going to shoot up, your insulin level is going to shoot up, and that insulin will drive your blood sugar into the cells. An hour and a half, 2 hours later, they have a crash of blood sugar and you feel hungry. And the same thing happens after lunch. So those who experience the mid-morning blah, the mid-afternoon blah, instead of going for an energy drink, cut down your complex carbohydrate intake in the morning or at lunchtime. You won't experience that crash.
Hmm.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It is that insulin spike is strictly related to the glucose elevation, which is consequence of high intake of complex carbohydrate in modern age from grains. Now, supplements. There are different problems with the supplement. First of all, we don't know what we are missing, what nutrients we are missing from the food.
Right.
Secondly, do the supplements have the same nutrients that the body needs? They are not standardized. Third, when you sit down to eat, we have no clue what nutrients the body is looking for. So you have three different things to optimize. How is that possible?
Well, in my head, I was thinking, well, maybe it's through, you take a multivitamin, you have some sort of supplement shake or something. You try and hit those thresholds of all the nutrients and like, as part of your day, and then it wouldn't matter afterwards. But I don't know if that's faulty thinking, or if you'd
Right?
even know
No,
that
no,
you
no,
get
no,
all of
no.
them.
That's not a faulty thing. You are doing the variety of meals in a different way. That's
Got
all.
it. Okay.
What I'm suggesting is, if we can get it from natural foods, there's an optimization of ratio of different nutrients.
Yep.
Because nature made our human body to be able to absorb the nutrient at the right ratio at the right time from what nature produced. Otherwise, we would not have been living all these years.
Yeah. So go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
So, what I suggest is, you not only need health, but also you need to have a strong immune system, especially if you have any cancer tendencies or you are a cancer survivor. So, I suggest people they should make it a point to eat 3 different vegetables a day, 3 different fruits a day, 3 different nuts a day.
That's for our immune system. That 3-3-3.
So that is general health as well as immune system.
Okay.
3 different vegetables, 3 different fruits, 3 different nuts, because that gives you almost all the nutrients, the 100 nutrients we are talking about. Then you can add non-vegetarian items or eggs or whatever. But this will give you the micronutrients that you need. You can supplement that with spices and herbs, and of course, supplements if you want, vitamins or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Is this where, and I wanted to get to this as well, because you mentioned, I think in the upcoming book, that you even include like pandemics, like COVID-19 as a lifestyle disease. Is that because of that just weakened immune system that it's considered that?
Are you talking about COVID?
Sure.
Okay. Why did COVID go from China being endemic to Europe? Because it was taken there not by a vector, but by human beings.
Right.
The modern travel is what makes pandemics possible. Otherwise, it should be an endemic in that area, and then people can control it, contain it. The travel is the modern aspect of lifestyle that makes it. It's the same thing in the Spanish flu. It started in Europe, but the soldiers, they brought it to different countries. So the lifestyle of the soldiers made the spread possible. Here, it became faster because of the fast travel. So to me, it is primarily the lifestyle produced the spread.
Got it.
Now, do you know how does the virus spreads, the COVID virus?
Well, assume through respiratory droplets.
Okay. If it's a respiratory drop, what does that mean?
Right.
If you go in front of a mirror and you breathe on the mirror, the mirror gets cloudy, right? Why?
From the temperature or the moisture in your breath.
The water droplets, with each breath, you are spewing out water droplets.
Right.
And that makes sense. If you have an infection of COVID, each one of those water droplets can carry a virus particle. If somebody is in front of you, if they breathe in, these water droplets will fall to the ground within 4 feet because they're affected by gravity, unless it's an aerosol which goes up to 8 feet. If you breathe it in, it goes into your nose, into the sinuses, and it has to attach itself to the cell wall. Okay? So this virus originally is from a bat. It lives with the bat very comfortably. It does not infect the bat, damage the bat. They are symbiotic there, just like we carry a lot of germs in our body. The bat virus got into, they call now a coon dog, a hunting dog. That got infected. And there it got mutated and produced the capability to attach itself to a human cell. So if that intermediate animal was not there, COVID would not have happened, because it could not attach it to a human cell receptor.
Right.
Just like you have, every house has a lock, every lock has a key, but you cannot use the same key to unlock all the locks. It has to be modified, cut into the right pattern.
Mm-hmm.
That is what the intermediate animal did. The spike protein was modified in such a way now the spike protein can attach itself to the receptor on the cell wall in the sinuses, because you breathed in that virus. The sinus cell, anything that attaches to the cell receptor, for the sinus cell, it means it is something useful. In the body, that is how the cell feeds itself, because it cannot identify who is outside. It cannot do that. As soon as it is attached, it's automatically, the cell will send somebody to open the door. The cell will facilitate entry of the virus into the cell. Then the virus will go to the nucleus, where there is a gene, and will force the gene to inscribe a work order with a copy of the virus, with a blueprint. And this work order with the blueprint is carried by a messenger, the messenger RNA, that goes to the factory outside the nucleus in the cell. And the order is given, and the factory churns out more copies of the virus. It comes out of the nose, it can drop down into the lungs and infect the lungs, or with each breath, it can keep spreading. So, if you are in close proximity with groups of people, as in a gathering, in a social environment, you spread it faster. It's a lifestyle disease.
Right. So the lifestyle aspect is that A, travel, and B, the social aspect of it.
Associations, contact, grouping together, all these are much more now compared to it was before.
And the last question I'll ask is, you talked a lot about patients, their families, and things like that being able to ask the appropriate questions. Why do you think it is that people are afraid to ask doctors these pointed questions, and why is it so imperative that they do so for their health?
Because if I depend on you to survive, how strong can I question you? Because some people will take it, I'm questioning you, not asking a question to understand. But if you take it in the wrong way, he said, forget it. You go find somebody else.
Right.
That's the problem. The medical schools don't equip us to be empathetic or patient or understanding. We are supposed to know. We tell you what to do. You never tell me how I should practice. That is the mentality, unfortunately, of the majority of doctors who are trained.
Well, that
So
makes a lot.
Right?
No, it makes a lot of sense. Empathy is something we all could use more of in all of our conversations, I think.
Yeah. And then the doctor should be humble.
Yeah.
They don't know everything, but they pretend they know. And type 2 diabetes is an excellent example. They have no clue what is insulin resistance is. But they have national associations, international associations. They give out awards and certificates and walk and make money, collect money for all diabetes research. Why can't they even tell? We don't even know what we are talking about. But we want your money.
Yeah.
We are doing research. We are on the verge. 20 years ago, I wrote an article, a letter to the NIH. No, how do we know the NIH, the NIDDK, the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive Diseases, Kidney Diseases, they have on their website, type 2 diabetes starts when 3 types of cells, liver, fat, and muscle, stop responding to insulin. I said, this is called insulin resistance. I asked them, how do you know? What's the proof? Oh, we are on the verge of finding the proof. That was 20 years ago. 20 years later, I sent the same question and I got the same answer. We are on the verge. We just found a new molecule. Doing what? So when do we have the real conversation? Unless we start asking questions. How many of your relatives will have to lose their kidneys and go on dialysis, go blind, have heart attack, develop Alzheimer's, lose their limbs, and develop cancer? Type 2 diabetic patients have 50% higher chance of pancreatic cancer, liver cancer, colon cancer, endometrial cancer, and all the cancers are higher in these people. Why? Because the glucose level. Unless we start asking questions, it won't change.
No, it's a powerful message. Where do is the book going to be available everywhere that people can get books?
My books are available on Amazon.
Okay.
And there are, I say, 5 books. The 6th book is going to be released in about 2 months. That's the cookbook and exercise guide for every adult type 2 diabetic.
Yeah, but even if I don't have type 2 diabetes, I could use it, right?
Oh, absolutely. If you want to prevent it.
Yeah.
Same thing. And these are very delicious. I was fortunate to have a professional chef design. If you look at it, you may think that bun is made of grains, right?
Yeah.
It's not.
What is it?
Well, you have to read the book.
I like it. Hey, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to walk through that. I
My
really appreciate
website is drjohnonhealth.com.
And we'll make sure we put a link to both the books and your website in the show notes. And Dr. John, we thank you, man.
And I thank you so much, Mr. Simon, if I may call you Jordan.
Of course.
I thank you for having me, and I hope you will spread the message because so many people are afraid to ask questions.
Well, I think that, yeah, no, it's an important thing we all need. Like, you got to be able to ask. And I think it's awesome to meet someone like yourself that's humble enough to say, hey, even as a doctor, we don't have all the answers, but here's, an avenue that I think can help people.
If you start having problems with your one kidney, you're a diabetic, you're taking insulin, ask the doctor, why am I continuing this line of treatment? Can it protect? If I keep my A1C below 7, can it protect my other kidney? Can it protect my other eye? Can it protect my heart? Can it prevent my cancer from coming back? Ask, because you have to take charge of your own body, your own health. The doctors are looking at blood number. No, you want your health.
Well,
I don't sell anything on my website. There's no supplements, no medication, nothing, only information. And the same in my books. You don't have to accept what I say unless it makes sense to you.
Well, it made a lot of sense to me. So
thank you.
No, it really did. And I'm not just saying that, but it did. It makes a lot of sense.
So I need help from people like you to spread the word so that we can save the lives and limbs and organs of so many people. There are almost 500 million people around the world with diabetes. There are 120 million in the United States, 80 pre-diabetic and 40 already diagnosed. What is their future? What can they expect? If they want to be free of diabetes, this is what they need. Diabetes free.
No, and I'm happy to do my part to spread the word, because I do think that it's important, and we're just going to have more and more people falling into that category, right? I mean,
I thank you for your kindness and your time.
Of course. Thanks again, Dr. John.